Welcome, friends. It is week one, lecture two. So it's our second lecture. We've got a lot to cover today, so I want to make sure that we get started and get going. A little bit of housekeeping. You'll see this. A lot of instructors will do this. If you move on to web fundamentals with me, this is what I will always do. Every class, it gets annoying, but we want to make sure that you know what is expected of you and what you can prepare for. So a few things. You've got discussion questions. Those are due by Sunday. Those close Sunday. So if you don't do them by Sunday, that is a big deal. So please make sure you do them because we can't open them up again. It's part of, again, the accreditation and it's part of, a state attendance portion. And so we can't kind of go back and do that. So if you don't do them, you're going to have to retake this course and that's going to suck and it's going to put you behind. So please don't do that. So make sure you do your discussion questions. If you're accelerated, that's 2 questions. If you're flex, then that's 1 question. You do have some core assignments here. You can find them all here that just kind of walk through these core code challenges, create variables, core algo app level 1. Yesterday in office hour, we walked through level 2. So just to kind of show you guys a couple things, and we did it as a class. And so make sure you're doing level 1, you have your assignment Discord, you're predicting arrays, and you're get on that ride, and you're level 5. So quite a bit of stuff. Make sure it's done by Sunday. And the last thing is that your belt exam, can you already believe we have been here for 3 days and you already have an exam opening? It actually opens tomorrow. And so what will happen is I will send out an email in the morning and just say, hey, you have your first exam. And all it is you're going to go on to, I'll give you a code and I'll walk you through how to do that. But it's going to be something similar to this. Like if you've got the Algo app, it is going to be hosted on here. It's not going to be like level 12 or anything crazy like that. But you will do it here and this will give you your submission. This will give you everything. And if you've passed or not. A couple things with that. And again, I'll put all of this in your email. So if you're like stressing out right now, don't close down, don't close off. It's going to be okay. You'll get 5 hours to do it. So you've got 5 whole hours to do it. You can, keep retrying. It's very similar to the Algo. It is on the Algo app. So, you can retry. It doesn't show you like the video of like, here's how we did it. Obviously it's an exam, so it doesn't do that. But you'll have 5 hours to do it. And you also get 3 chances to do it. So if you don't pass within the 5 hours and you shoot me an email, I can send you a new code. It will be different, but it'll be the same sort of format. Nothing crazy, just like different numbers and different kind of flow. So you get 3 submissions to do that. Now, do you have to take it tomorrow? No, you don't. You have as much time as you need. You have, I guess here's what I would say. You have up to 3 submissions, meaning that if you don't pass it the first time, that's fine. You can take a second one and you can take a third one. What that also means, and this is throughout the boot camp, you'll have three attempts for each belt exam that you have. One thing to note is you have up to 3 chances, but if you wait until Wednesday to do your first one, you don't still get 3 chances. Your last submission is due by end of day Wednesday. So if you start it Friday, and this is what I would say, is get to a point where you feel fairly comfortable with the algos. And I think after today's lectures, you will feel much more comfortable. To where you just at least try one, right? Like try the belt exam, go from there. What you don't want to do is wait until Tuesday, take the exam, find out if you failed or not. And then maybe it's a lot harder. You just didn't really know. And all of a sudden you try Wednesday and that's your second one, you turn it in and, my turnaround time is not going to be as efficient. There's a lot of you guys here. So if you're doing it on Wednesday, it'll be a stretch if I can get you a third code, but then you still have to do it by the end of day Wednesday. So it just causes a lot of stress. So what I would say is you will get the code in the morning tomorrow. In the morning, maybe not in the morning, but sometime this weekend, just give it a try. If you shoot me an email, I don't answer emails on the weekends, but I'll put it in Discord for our TAs. And so if you are looking for an additional code, our TAs will be able to provide that for you because our TAs do work on the weekends. I don't. It is not a try per day. If you get it and you fail and you get a code that same day, you can try it again. So you just have up to 3 options to try it. But again, remember, If you wait until Wednesday to do your tries, you don't get 2 more tries. You kind of used it. It just has to be submitted. So you have up to 3 chances, but you've got to make sure that they're all like the last one is Wednesday. So if you wait, then you only get 1. So I would definitely say try it this weekend. Find a time of 5 hours that you can sit and say, okay, I can knock this out. I can try this. I can do this. I would keep working through the Algo app to kind of get you some more understanding and preparation. And please know that it is open universe. So if you are wanting to, go in and you're like, oh, how do I do this? Like, you can still use our platform. You can still go in and say like, wait a second, what is it about arrays again? Like, you can go in, you can use my lectures, you can use that stuff. What you can't use is any sort of collaboration with cohort mates. So exactly, Paul, thank you for that. So you guys cannot do it together. Also, your tests are going to be different. So it wouldn't work anyway. And then secondly is you can't use any sort of AI. So none of that. It's actually not going to help you because it's not really going to make sense. So those are the 2 things, but you can use Google, you can use Stack Overflow, you can use the platform, you can use any of that. How many questions? I believe it is around, I think it's around 10. During our break between classes, I'll go and look at the exam, and I think it's around 10-ish. So it's not super crazy, but so it also isn't any sort of discussions. Oh, somebody said, is there a minimum length and number of words the discussions have to be? Nope. Obviously, if you just put a letter, that's not going to be sufficient. So just answer it, but you don't have to go in super depth for that. But it'll be, again, the exam is just going to be this basically, but it'll be an exam on the Algo app. Cool. Any questions about belt exam, core assignments, discussion questions? Great. Okay. Well, we've got a doozy today. We've got 2 big conditionality. We've got 2 big things that I want to know that we're going to talk about today. Before I jump in, somebody says, what's the importance of the belt exam? You cannot move forward unless you pass the belt exam. The belt exam just shows us that you're prepared and ready to enter in. Coding Dojo doesn't require that you have any prior experience, but this class is to make sure that you are ready to jump into the next level. If you can't pass this exam, we'd be doing you a disservice if you just moved on to the next stuff, because it's going to be a lot harder to grasp. And so that's why we have this belt exam in this entire course. And somebody said, are they pass fail? Yep, it's pass fail. So don't get too stressed out about it. It's not like a crazy exam. They do get more challenging, your exams, but this one is, if you can do the Algo app, you should be A-okay. Okay. Any other questions before I jump into teaching? Just want to remind you guys that right here is your lectures. They are also, here's our playlist right here. Yesterday we did have an office hour where, again, we went over, I think it was level 2, and we talked all about different mathematical stuff. And if you have like X and X dot length and methods of functions and methods of arrays, then we talked about that as well. So please be aware of that. I do actually want to touch on that. Just so, because I didn't talk about it. So whenever we declared a array, so I said, let X equal 1, 2, 3. We had talked about that this is a variable declaration, right? And then what is this doing right here? What is this bracket doing? Does anybody remember? What's the importance of having a bracket compared to like a parenthesis or a curly brace or a percentage sign? Yeah, exactly, Jacob. It declares that this is an array, right? It says, it tells JavaScript, because we're not telling, remember, JavaScript's what we call a dynamic language. Some languages make you say something like, array X, and you have to say what data type it is. This one does not, right? JavaScript nor Python make you do that. They're dynamic. So it just infers. It's what we call an inferred language. And so versus a compiled. And so here, this is saying, hey, this is an array. And the importance of that is when it saves it, not only does it say, okay, I'm going to save this as an array, but we talked a little bit about each type, whether it's a composite type or a primitive type, has some functionality to it, right? We saw that when we added those together, they did some mathematics, right? It did some arithmetic. When we added two strings together, it didn't do that, right? And so they have different, what we call properties. What they also have is what we call methods. And so I'm not going to go super in depth in this because you'll learn about this later on. But each of these types is what we call a class, right? So we've got an array class, we've got a string class, a number class, and all that means is that it's got certain properties, certain capabilities that it can have. Well, within arrays, there's two things you can use. You can use MDN docs or Web3 schools. Both of these are on the helpful links of our sheet. They're both in here, wherever the helpful links is. Yeah. But with arrays, we have these, what we call methods that arrays can do. It's just, again, this functionality of what an array can do. You might hear method and you might hear function. They're the same thing. All a method is just a function associated with a class versus just a function living by itself. We'd call a function, and a function associated with a class we call a method. But you can kind of use them synonymously right now in your understanding, and that's okay. And so with these array methods, it is what can arrays do? And there's quite a bit, right? Or what can we do with arrays would be a better way to define it. There is one called length, right? And what it does is it returns the length of the property. So basically how many, and I'll put this in chat for you guys, how many items are in my array. So if I come here and I say console.log, and I say x.length. Perfect. And I run this. Another note is, in order to get this play button, you come here and you type in code runner. Somebody brought this up. I thought it was native. It's been a long time since I've downloaded it, but it's an extension called code runner. And then you just look at it, and it's the one that's got like 20 million. There is one down here that's got like 200. Don't do that one. Do this guy, the one that's got 20 million. You might have to like restart. And then it'll start working, and that'll give you the little plus sign right here to run your code. So here we are, we're using code runner. We run our code and we get 3, right? There are 3 items within my array. So the length of my array is 3, right? Not specifically this 3, but if I had this as 7, my length would then be 4. Right? There are 4 items within my array. Just put a 1 in the chat if this makes sense. Put a 0 if it does not. Cool. And I do go more in depth in this in the office hour if you're wanting. I just wanted to touch on this. That way you guys know and you see it. If you guys didn't put a 1, can you just maybe put in chat what is not clicking here? Maybe some things that I can do, and I'll explain a little bit more. And then we can, as you guys are putting that in there. There's 2 other main ones that you'll probably use within the Algo app, and it is pop and push. What this does, and again, reading documentation is going to be a really, really, really important thing. But a push method adds a new element to an array at the end. So here, if I said X, because I'm saying, okay, this is an array, dot push. And what am I wanting to push? 8. Now we see there's 4 things. Then I'm pushing the number 8. So I should have a length of 5, which I do. And then now if you see, if I just console log X, we get 8 is added to the end. The same thing happens. Well, not the same thing, but something similar happens if I say pop. What pop will do is it will remove the last value within your array. So here, if I console log X, it should just give me 1, 2, 3, because I'm popping, which is going to take me the last one. Cool. 1, 2, 3. So push adds in, pop takes away. And the way you do it is you just declare the array that you want to run the method on. So in this case, it is X, because that's what we've defined it as, dot, and then the method that you want to run. And then it will run that function for you, or run that method for you. And there's a whole bunch that you can do. We talk about, if you, in the office hour, if this isn't making sense, I would encourage you to go watch that. Somebody said, how can you remove a value that comes before the last element? Grace, we talk about that in office hour. It's called splice. And so we have a lot to go over today, but it is in office hour, but it's called splice. So if you're interested in that, that's in that recording is right here for you. We go through quite a bit of stuff. It's kind of at the beginning. So, but it's one called splice if you want to do that way. Because I think Lucas had the same question. So I just want to let you guys be aware of that. So if you are seeing pop and push and length, those are really the big three that you're going to deal with. You're not really going to deal with a lot of this stuff right now. Later on, you will, like maybe toString, or you might have like a splice or a slice. You might have some of that later on. You're not going to use that for the next 6 weeks. But I just wanted you to be aware, because you will use pop, push, and length within the Algo app. So I just want to make sure you guys are aware of that. Okay, great. So I want to talk about conditionals and what a conditional is. And we talk a little bit about it in office hour as well, but I'm going to go through it in detail right now. Is sometimes we want to basically create, again, for a computer, we're just telling it what to do at what point, right? And so we're saying, okay, if I get this in, then I want, if it's sunny outside, turn on my AC. And if it's snowing outside, turn on my heater, right? This kind of thing. A computer needs to know, what are my conditions? If you want me to do something, it needs to know, well, what are the conditions that will dictate my action? And so that's what we call a conditional, is when we have some sort of condition and an action based on a condition. We call that a conditional. Might make sense here in a statement in a second. It's also called an if statement. You might hear it a lot as an if statement, but really all it is again, us saying, hey, as JavaScript is reading our code, when we say if, we're saying, hey, there's some unique condition. And if that is true, then I want you to do X, Y, or Z. So the way we define it, or the structure of our conditional, is a few things. First off, we start it with the word if. In the same way that whenever we do the bracket for an array, or we do a number or a string, right? And it's kind of this key to let JavaScript know, okay, this is an array, this is a string, this is whatever. We use the keyword of if to say, hey, there's a conditional coming. Then what we're going to do, and this is all in our, all in the platform. I just wanted to show you guys exactly where that's at, where we talk about conditionals, and it's all broken down right here for you. But we say if, and then we give it our condition. And then the last thing we do is we say, okay, if this condition is true, then do whatever is within our curly brackets. Whatever is within our curly brackets. So do you guys remember what was the primitive data type that tells that was just true or false? Does anybody remember what that was? Yeah, exactly. It's a Boolean. Great job. And so I told you guys we're going to use Booleans a lot. And really, it's going to be important because a conditional statement is built on the backs of a Boolean, right? When we give a condition, so let's say that for right now, we've got X equals 3. And I can say, okay, well, if X is greater than 3, then I want to console log X is greater than 3. Perfect. So what my condition is going to do is I've got X here that I've declared, and it's going to read this first line JavaScript's going to read this first line. It's going to say, okay, great. We've got this variable called X. Perfect. Then it's going to get here and it's going to say, oh, I've got a condition. And what this is going to do is this is going to read this and it's going to evaluate it into a Boolean, meaning, is this condition true or false? Is X greater than 3? What do you guys think? Is X greater than 3? Yeah, it's false, right? No. X is 3, but it's not greater than 3. And so what we do here is if this condition is false, then it skips this code. It skips anything that's within this curly bracket and it just goes on to the next line. I could have this. I have all this, right? All this code. If this is false, it just goes on to line 29. It skips everything. And you can even see VS Code kind of helps by truncating it a little bit just to kind of show you, right? That all those lines just live within this if statement. Cool. Now, if it is true, so let's say this is 4, then we say, okay, this is true. And I enter and you can think about this curly bracket as a doorway, right? We open the door. It's like I get access to a new room. And then I do everything within that curly bracket. And then I close the door behind me. Right? I got to make sure I close the door behind me. So again, if I had just a whole bunch of code, it's going to do this, then this, then this, then this, then this, then this. So it's going to do a whole bunch of things only if this is true. Okay. Any questions on this so far? So if I run this, we should get X is greater than 3 because it is, right? 4 is greater than 3. Cool. Now, let's say that I've got something unique. Or let's say that I want to see if it's greater than 1, or let's say if it equals 1. And we're going to talk about equals here in a second. But I also want to see if it's 2. Like I have multiple conditions. I don't have to create a new if. I can say else if X is equal to 2. And then I send console.log X equals 2. Cool. Say X. Perfect. Great. So if I've got multiple conditions, then what I can do is I can have what we call an else if, meaning, hey, check this one. And if that's not true, then go down and check this one. And I can have as many else if as I want. So if I wanted to say else if X equals 3, and I say console.log, you guys kind of get the gist here, X. I could do that all the way through as much as I want. And I have as many else ifs, but I only will have one if statement for this. And that keeps them as the same conditional, what we're going to call a chain. We're going to talk about chaining methods here in a second, or conditional chains. And this is all the same thing. Now, lastly, let's say I just wanted to be like, all right, if not, then just say X. I don't know what X equals, right? Because it's not 1, 2, or 3. We see that's 4. Then at the end, and always just put this at the end, you just have your else. And your else is sort of like your kind of cleanup. You're like, all right, whatever. If it doesn't match any of my conditions, just throw it in there. So I can console.log X is something I don't know. Okay. So here we're going to, we see that x equals 1. If x equals 1, we console log x equals 1. Else if x equals 2, it equals 2, right? Same on 3. And then worst case scenario, we say x is something I don't know. So if I run this, we get x is something I don't know because it's not 1, 2, or 3. It's not 1, 2, or 3. Now, this is what we call a conditional chain. And this is really, 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 really important. So make sure you catch this. And I already see this. I see some of this in the chat, but let's say that we had it like this. So we had it like this. Okay. What do you guys think is going to happen here? What do you guys think? When if I run this, what do you guys think is going to happen? What will it console log? We saw that it already console logged. X is something I don't know. I see some X is greater than 1. Some 2. Okay. So let's test it and see. X is greater than 2 is what people think. Come here. We see X is greater than 1. And this is a really, 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 really important thing to know about conditional statements. Is the beginning of it is an if that always starts a conditional statement. The end can be an else, but I do want to note you can just have like a rogue X is greater than 5. Like you could have a rogue, like a rogue if statement, and it doesn't need to have an else if or a else. Like it can just, you can have just a standalone if statement and that's okay. But when you've got this entire statement that consists of an if, an else if, and an else, or even just an if and an else if it opens with if, that is starting what we call a chain. The minute it's going to look for the first one that's true. The second it finds one that's true, it skips everything else. So in this case, we look and we said, okay, X is greater than 1. Well, X is 4. That is true. So what it does is it enters into my if statement, console logs it, and then it actually bypasses all of this because it doesn't need it. The condition's already been met for that chain. You can sort of think of like it broke it. It's done. We don't need that anymore. So it's really important to know if you've got something unique, you want to put your most unique kind of at the top, right? Because then you want to make sure, like if it was really important that I wanted to know if this was equal to 2, because if it's equal to 2, then it does something, crazy, like if it's your birthday or whatever. And this is a really important thing for me to know. But if I have it here, well, 2 is still greater than 1, so it's never going to run. This code will never run because anything greater than 1 is always going to catch this. So it will never get here. And so whenever you're dealing with conditional statements, you want to make sure that you are putting your more unique ones at the top and then your more generic ones at the bottom. So somebody says, why does he use 2 instead of 1? So 1 is declaring. You are declaring that you've got a new variable. 2 is a comparative. We are comparing 2 values. Does this value equal this value? I cannot put this or cannot put that. That doesn't work, right? Because I'm declaring a new value. I have to do this. Now, this is JavaScript, like I told you guys at the beginning, and it was built in 6 days, so it's got some weird things. If I were to say this, what do you guys think is going to happen? What do you guys think is going to happen? X is something I don't know. Let's see. What the heck? What on earth? Remember, whenever we added in to a string and a number and it converted the number for me, it will do the same sort of thing from a comparison side. And so here, let's just say that I have equals equals 1. What it will do is it will convert these to be the same type. Which can get really confusing, right? So we know that this string of 2 is not the same as the number of 2. But if I run this, it says X is greater than 2. Now that's because when we just do a double equals, that is comparing the value. Now JavaScript will convert those into whatever type they need to match. If I want to make sure that not only the value, but also the data type is the same. So I don't want it to run. I want it to run X is something I don't know, because 2 as a string is not the same as 2 as a number. Does anybody know what I would add in here? Anybody have any ideas? Any guesses? Yeah, exactly. You would use what we call a triple equal sign. So not just 1, 2, 3 equal signs. What this triple equal sign will do is that it will, and it's telling me it's always going to be false because these aren't the same type, but it's going to make sure not only is the value the same, but the type is the same. So because this is a string and this is a number, that is now no longer the same. If I just have double, this is kind of like a lazy comparison, but it can get you into some trouble. Right? It's gonna see, we kind of have this issue here that can get you in trouble down the line because you might think you're working with a number and you're working with a string and you didn't really catch it. So this is always a great thing to kind of be more strict. But yeah, this triple equal sign, if you see that in the wild, that's just comparing not only the value, but the data type as well. Is it a string? Is it a number? Is it an array? Is it whatever? Yeah. Paul put it in chat. Double equals an evaluated equivalency check. And then triple equals is what we call a strict literal equivalency check. So is it literally the same thing? Same type and everything? Or is it kind of like, it's like pretty equal. So that's just something to note. Cool. We can also, okay, any questions on that? So I'm just going to pause there. Any questions? Feel free to raise your hand. Feel free to kind of put in chat. You got a question? I'm trying to go through the chat now to see. So somebody said, should I put least likely at the top and most likely at the bottom? It depends on what you're trying to accomplish. It's not like you always want to put like the weird one at the top, but if there is something like, hey, something I do need to know if this is a unique case, then yeah, those would rise to the top. You don't want to like hate on the more unique ones, but you want to make sure that you are having the conditions to where if it is this unique time, then it does get caught. So somebody said, in what situation would you use double equals over triple equals? I think you could be pretty safe. Paul, any thoughts on that? I think you'd be pretty safe with doing triple equals just to know what your comparison, but
I generally stick to triple equals.
I can't hear you, buddy.
Can you all hear me? I'm still cutting out.
Maybe it's me. Can everybody else hear him?
I can hear him.
Okay.
Oh, it's me. I'm the issue. Oh, duh.
Okay,
Go ahead.
I generally stick to triple equals.
Yeah.
I mean, if you know, it's just safer, right? Like, it's easier to get an error than fix it than to like run into weird issues down the line that you're not even thinking of.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, triple equals is kind of the safe bet. Again, Lucas, I would say it's not as easy as no matter what, and you'll learn more and more. Like there's going to be use cases, but I would say for right now, what you're doing, just go ahead and stick with that. But don't be so rigid. Like I want you guys to very much so hear this. There's a million ways to do coding. what Paul and I say is not law, right? So if you see it done somewhere else, don't be like, oh, they didn't know. Like there's a million ways to do something. I would say as you guys are practicing using triple equals, getting understanding of that is really, really valuable. And again, just like Paul said, it's just kind of putting safeguards. It's just kind of putting safeguards, especially as you guys are learning right now, just to prevent you from making some bigger mistakes. Cool. Okay. One thing I also want to do is you can add in. So let's say a conditional with multiple conditions. So we've got two things we can do. We can use the double ampersand, which is and. So I'm gonna say and. And then we've got the double pipe, which is or. And the double pipe is right above the right enter with like the forward slash or backslash. I don't know which one it is, but got the double pipe and that represents or. And so what we can do is let's say let y equal 46. Cool. I can say if y, oops, let's see, y is greater than 35 and y is less than 56, then I can say something like console.log y. Cool. What this is doing, if I've got this double ampersand, so this and, that just represents and, then what this means is that both of these conditions have to be true in order for me to enter into my if statement. Right? So right now, that is correct. Both of these are true. 46 is greater than 35 and it's less than 56. Because both of these equate to true, then we can jump in and do whatever's within this if statement. Let's say that this was 67. Well, this condition's true. Y is greater than 35, but this one is not, right? It is not less than 56. So because only one of them is true, it does not enter into this if statement because it is because we're using and. Both of them have to be true. You can have multiple ands. So you can have multiple, depending on how rigid it gets, you can add in multiple. But the big thing to take away is when you're using these, when you're using and, that means both conditions have to be true. Whereas if I were to do the pipes, only one condition has to be true. So if this one's true or this one's true, they can both be true. It doesn't really matter. Right? As long as one of these is true, then I enter into my if statement. The or is just like, one of them. The and is, okay, these have to be true. Now, can you add in this? No, you can't, right? You want to stick with your ors or your ands. Because then but like you can't commingle them together. But you can have multiple ors as well. You can have or y equals 67. Do triple equals. And so is this true? Yeah, that's true. This is not true. This is true, right? So even if this was less than 35, these both are not true, but this one is true. So it will enter into my console. Yeah, you do have to hold shift in order to do that. Good catch. Thank you. Any questions on and or? Put a 1 in the chat if this makes sense. Put a 0 if it does not. And if you got a 0, that's okay. Just kind of let me know what's not making sense. Okay. Now, as the last thing I want to talk about, then we're going to take a little bit of a break. So somebody said, what's the specific use case for this? There's going to be a million when you want to say, I mean, there's quite a few things. Let's say you wanted to say like, okay, if their birthday is today or it's this month, we're going to send them a coupon. Right? Like you could do multiple things. But it just kind of allows the when you're creating conditions, it allows for some more flexibility there. You're going to be doing a lot of comparison, a lot of checking to say, okay, are they checked in? Like whenever, I guess, to forecast in the future, you're going to build login and registrations. And you're going to say, hey, let's say you're creating a library or an IMDb for movies, right? And you only want the user that created the movie to be able to edit it. Well, once they log in, you're going to have a check and they go to edit. You're going to have a check and you're going to say, are they logged in? So if they're logged in, and there's a way we do that, and they are the creator, then I will go in and enter and allow them to edit. Right. And so it just allows us a little bit more functionality when we're getting to our, when we're starting to build our applications. You're going to use it a ton. Okay. The last thing I wanted to talk about for this guy, is I want to talk about nested if statements. And just let you guys be aware of this, is you can have, so let's say, let Z equal zebra. Cool. I can say if, let's do, if A is greater than 5, I can console.log A. And within this if statement, I can also create a new chain. I can say if Z equals zebra, so I have an if within an if statement. So this is allowed, this is capable, you can do that. So let me get all this out and then we'll console log it. Perfect. Clear that, run it. Oh, anybody see what I did there? Why is it running this code? What'd I forget to do? Well, zebra. Yeah, I didn't save. And this is actually, let's keep it and I'll show you guys. But yeah, I didn't save it. So now we just get 6. And that's a great catch. Remember, lowercase z and uppercase Z are not the same. And so when a computer breaks it down, it's going to see the lowercase z and say, nope, I'm not going to infer that lowercase z zebra and this zebra is the same. So so it doesn't run that, right? It did not. Z did not equal zebra lowercase. So now if I run it, I save it and I run it. Here we get zebra.
Let's see what happens when you keep the Z lowercase and you do a double equals.
Double. Yeah, let's see it. Run it. 6.
So in this
I think
case,
it's because in binary that those are 2 different numbers
yeah, I think so.
in the ASCII table. Yeah. So just so you guys know, this is way too much information, but I love sharing it for you. So computers, the way they break it down, right? Computers are very smart and also stupid, right? And so we have to break down everything in what we call binary, right? And so JavaScript still does it. There's lots of different languages that do it, but all a computer sees is 1s and 0s. So anytime you're like watching a movie and there's a hacker and you see 1s and 0s, it's kind of true. That's the computer language. Now we have languages like Python and Java and JavaScript that we can understand and does some certain stuff, but under the hood, it all just converts everything to binary, to ones and zeros. And so everybody got together and said, hey, this computer thing might be a big deal for our future. We should make sure we're all on the same page. And so what it does is it breaks down everything that we have into binary, and each letter has a number associated. Now in binary, we can show numbers like just in ones and zeros, and this is basically twos. We're not going to, you don't need to understand that. You don't need to understand binary. But the big thing to note is that the ASCII code for the lowercase letter a is 97, and the ASCII code for capital A is 65. So when a computer sees that and it's comparing the two, you can sort of think about it as saying, hey, is 97 equal to 65? Well, it's not, right? Those aren't the same things. And so from a computer, because it's limited and it just knows ones and zeros, it's going to look and say, nope, 65 is not the same as 97. Doesn't work. And so that is a big thing to know. I mean, that's kind of agnostic to your language, is that if I do lowercase zebra, it's breaking that down into 122 just for that one letter. But this uppercase, the way it's saved is 90. So it's comparing is 90, 122. No, they're not. Okay, they are different, and we can, they're not the same, right? So it is important to make sure you've got the correct lowercase, uppercase. It is case sensitive. Somebody said, how do you know when to use lowercase and uppercase? Most of the time you're going to use lowercase. I don't know that. I would say that it's by default you use lowercase. Reading that. Yep. So binary comparison. Yep. It's just machine code. Cool. So you can have that. Now let's do, let's do this. Okay. What do you guys think is going to happen here? If I run this, what happens? Anybody tell me what they think is going to happen? Anybody? 6 and zebra. Somebody just said zebra. A. 6. Any other guesses? 6. Okay, so lots of A's. And I'm glad I showed you this then. If I run this, I get 6 and zebra. Now you might say, what on earth are you talking about? We just talked about this. Yes, when it is the same chain, we got an else if and if, then the first condition that is true is ran. Notice this is a new condition. Anytime it sees an if, it's a new chain. It has nothing to do with the other one. You can think about it as totally separate. And so because this is an if and this is an if, they are separate. They're not the same chain. It can only have one if, and then the minute it sees another one, that it's not nested or anything like that. The minute it sees another one, it kind of starts it new. And so because both of these are if, it's going to console log and run both of these. Somebody said, can you run an else if or an else in an if? Yeah, absolutely. So you could have like a, if Z equals Rhino, Cool. So I can do that, right? What it's going to do is it's going to go into this if statement. And it's going to say, is this true? Is A greater than 5? Well, A is 6. So yes, that's true. It's going to go and it's going to console log A. Then it's going to enter into this chain. And it's going to say, is Z equal to Rhino? Well, no, that's not false. That's false, right? So it's not going to read this, not going to do this. Then it's going to say, else if Z equals to lion. Okay, then console log lion. Nope, that's not it. We have this else statement. So we're going to get this nested if statement. Then we get here and our computer goes, oh, I've got a brand new if statement. And then it runs it. So now what this should give us is a nested if statement and Z. If I run it, I have an error. Where did I say X? Oh, because I uncommented these. Okay, so 6, nested if statement, zebra. Somebody asked, are you just pressing tab to shift? Nope, we talked about this in the first class. If you want to comment out something, you can either do double slash or the command question mark or the command or the control question mark if you're on Windows. That's just me. This is called a comment. We talked about it in the first class. So Thomas, yeah, you could. Like if I said, Thomas's question was, it'd be confusing, but could you theoretically have let zebra and let zebra as two different variables? Yep. If I said let. Yeah, that could be fine. You could have, I mean, you can have every variable you've ever had be zebra, as long as they're just named something different, or else you're going to keep writing it over. So somebody said the different if chains are grouped by the indents. Is that automatic? No, so it's not grouped by the indents. And this is really important because Python is grouped by indents. JavaScript is everything within the curly brackets. So you got to make sure your curly brackets are up to snuff. Now, VS Code, if you choose to use VS Code, then it automatically will do what we call bracket colorizer. So you can see how these are the same colors and it will add in for each bracket. It'll kind of show you where it's closed by the color. So that way, you know, like if you get to like MERN, you can ask Paul, that was always my issue. I was always missing a curly bracket somewhere. And so bracket colorizer will absolutely help you here. So this is going to be atrocious looking, but it could look like this. Like there is very little formatting that you have to do. It could look like this. It could all be on one line. Like there's nothing, this looks gross, so don't do it. My VS Code's automatically doing it. But yeah, Paul, it's just for readability. Yeah, it's vile. So let's go back. Okay. So it's just a readability thing. It helps me understand. But it as long as it's all JavaScript is reading is the curly brackets. So like sometimes you might see people do like that. Or if they have an if statement, they might just do it on one line. Something like that, which I still think is kind of confusing, but that's just a different way. So just really wanted to reiterate, Python is really big in indents. That's how it's called a code block. JavaScript is not. It's just the curly brackets is what is basically our compartmentalizing and kind of it's our door, right, to our just this area. Great question, though. So somebody said if everything else. Oh, yeah. Again, that's just readability. Somebody asked, is it possible to have a let Z equals zebra and zebra? No, it's not. It is not. Now, there's other ways you could do it. That's, I think, beyond the scope of what we're doing. If you wanted to account for everything, like somebody asked, how do you tell that zebra and zebra are the same? There's some built-in methods with strings. So similar to arrays, that we've got a 2 lowercase, and what that'll do is that'll lowercase every letter. And so if you wanted, like for that, what I could do is I could just lowercase it and then do a comparison that way. Like if I would have had zebra here, and then I just make sure everything's lowercase, that way I'm comparing apples to oranges is one way that you could do it, but that's way beyond the scope of what you're gonna have to do right now, but that is possible. So I like the way you're thinking. Okay, any other questions on conditional statements, if statements, any of that? No. Just put a 1 in the chat if this makes sense. Put a 0 if it does not. 100. Yeah, let me know if you have. Okay, perfect. Well, I'm gonna stop the recording here real fast.